Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I'm Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And Jack, we have a surprisingly packed show today. We are going to spend a good portion of the episode talking about one Merrill Kelly and the possibility of Merrill returning to the Diamondbacks next season. Certainly, we know that's something Merrill has at least some interest in. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about the team's situation over at first base. Jack, we've gotten a couple of different big reports along these lines here in the last 24 hours. The most recent one from Nick Picoro that came out today saying that Tyler Locklear is going to have surgery, not just on his elbow, but on his shoulder as well. Not exactly the best of news going into the offseason.
Yeah, he's got a torn elbow ligament, and he also has a labrum tear. And he's going to have surgery on both of those on October 16th, which, we kind of suspected it was going to be pretty bad because when I asked Tori, are you more concerned about the shoulder or the elbow? He said, well, both, kind of non-committally. And he was off seeing Dr. Meister in Los Angeles to get an opinion, or he said Dr. Meister wanted to, examine him in person because he was traveling overseas. So it kind of felt like this is where this was headed.
On a personal level, Jack, you always hate to see things like this. I mean, obviously, Tyler Locklear got a big opportunity with the Diamondbacks. It didn't go great for him down the stretch. He showed some better signs toward the end of the season. But then to have something like this happen, we don't know really much about the timeline here at this point, but you certainly feel for him on a personal level. As far as the Diamondbacks are concerned with their roster situation, Locklear was frankly a bit of a wild card going into next season. I certainly felt that I had no idea what to expect from Locklear next year. Certainly the results this season were not great, but maybe there's a world where Locklear actually bounces back next season and is able to cut down on the swing and miss and be a big part of the team's solution at first base. First base was already kind of a murky situation for this team going into 2026. With this news, that's just all the more the case now.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've been poking around on this news because I have an article in the can going up at 6 a.m. in the morning on Friday regarding the whole first base situation. And I was looking for updates on this. And so I reached out to Nick, and he reached out to the team. And that's how we ended up finding out the news on this for clarification. So, they didn't offer any timeline on Locklear. At this point, we don't know how long he's going to be out. I guess the good news here is it's not his throwing arm. But it will affect his hitting. And so hopefully that means that it's, a much shorter recovery. I don't know if it's a total like reconstruction of the elbow ligament or what. There's no details like that have come out yet. The surgery is October 16th. So, we'll find out after that exactly what the surgery was performed, and probably the team will have some idea of a timeline around that. So look for about, between October 16th and 20th, 25th, us to be able to get some news out about how long he's going to be out. I mean, if it's 6 months before he can swing a bat, then he's going to need at least all of April, to still work out at Salt River and kind of have his own spring training. If it's longer than that, who knows, So at this point, I think we can probably guess that he's likely to miss the start of the season, but just how deep into the season is it going to be? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It's totally unknown at this point. It would be pure speculation to say.
Of course, this news came on the heels of a report from Gambo about the Diamondbacks' first base situation this offseason. Gambo tweeted out on Wednesday afternoon, I would expect first base to not be much of a priority for the D-backs this offseason. They have Pavin Smith, Tyler Locklear, and Tim Tawa that can man the position. Could still add one because none of those guys are proven, but starting pitching and bullpen will be much higher of a priority. This report, of course, came before we knew what the story was with Tyler Locklear. So I guess it's possible that the calculus has changed, Jack, as a result of what we now know about Locklear. But also, if Gambo was doing this reporting yesterday and reaching out to people within the organization, those people would have known about the Tyler Locklear situation. So I'm inclined to think that they'd already factored that in, and that even with Tyler Locklear being in the situation that he is, first base is probably still not going to be a big priority this offseason.
I certainly agree that it's not the top priority. There's no doubt that pitching, both starting and bullpen, are the top priorities. However, that doesn't mean that figuring out first base isn't extremely important for this team. And so that's why I kind of dove into this topic. And, full disclosure for all our listeners, part of this was also born out of a debate that Jesse and I had one late night on the phone recently, as is so often the case.
Yeah, I was walking around the neighborhood and I had Jack on my AirPods, and we're going back and forth talking about first base, the first base situation for this team. That's just par for the course for us, Jack.
Exactly. Well, at this point in time, I think as you look at each of the players that are being talked about to man first base, I think we need to first be very clear-eyed about what happened after August 1st, after Josh Naylor left. And quite simply, in roughly 220 plate appearances out of first base, the Diamondbacks combined for a 560 OPS from the people that manned the position. Torey Lovello had a comment at one point where he said, and I quote, this was September 15th, we don't have a first baseman, right? This is crazy. We're in the middle of a pennant race, and this is where we're at. Because at that point in time, essentially, you had two utility players, Ildemaro Vargas and Tim Tawa, playing first base. Of course, Pavin Smith had been injured at the end of August. His last game of the season was August 27th. He went down with an oblique strain. Then Locklear went down with this injury after September 7th. And so from that point forward, they only had the two utility players to play first base. And those two took turns starting and got all the starts from that point forward at first. So I think it's important to recognize that, this wasn't just kind of a weakness. First base was a massive black hole for the offense over the final 2 months of the season. And so if you're talking about depending on Pavin Smith and depending on Tim Tawa, and then at some point, depending on Tyler Locklear, to fill those slots, it's really risky. I mean, they're in extreme danger of having if not the worst, one of the worst first base situations in all of baseball next year. And I'll be running through all of that, but I just before we get to the individual players and their prognosis, Jesse, what's your take? I don't know why I said Jerry. That's weird. Jesse, what's your take on the overall situation?
Well, I know me and Geraldo Perdomo, the resemblance is striking. Very easy to get us confused. Uh, yeah, so I definitely understand the trepidation with the Diamondbacks rolling with what they have at first base. Tim Tawa at times looked like you might have something there offensively. Certainly when he first came up, he had some good moments. The quality of the at bat was pretty strong. But Pavin Smith, I mean, what a weird season for him. He was one of the best hitters in the sport in April. You felt like his breakout from last season, small sample size though it was, might have been for real. And then in the second half of the year, or I mean, really from May onward, he just wasn't the same guy. His strikeout rate was way higher than it's ever been before, 31.9% by the end of the season. And all of that, as you might expect, is because his whiff rate was just way higher than it's been at any point in his career. Kind of a bizarre situation for him, where suddenly breaking pitches were just a huge problem. Just making any kind of contact there. So I understand the trepidation. At the same time, I think we have to be realistic that this team very likely is not going to go get Josh Naylor this offseason. I don't think they're going to bring him back. I don't think they're going to go sign Pete Alonso. And so you have to wonder, like, if you're looking at those mid-tier sorts of options that could be available via trade or free agency, who out there is convincingly better than Pavin Smith? Especially because Pavin Smith doesn't have any options left. So if you do go a different direction, there's a decent chance you have to move on from Pavin Smith entirely or feel comfortable doing that to make that happen. So I'm not saying that there aren't better options out there. I think there are certainly players that could be worth considering, but given what we've seen from Pavin the past couple of years, I mean, this is a guy who was a 130 WRC plus over the last 2 seasons. I know it was really ugly for a good portion of this season, but there are not that many players out there who have a 130 WRC plus over the last 2 years. And I understand if the D-backs still believe that they might have something there, despite how rough things were for really most of the season this year.
Right. And this is kind of where our debate got a little sharp and pointed because I feel like it's parsing too much of a sample size that essentially really was from September 1, 2024 through April 21st of 2025, April 20th of 2025. In that 139 PA sample, he hit 333, he walked a ton, and he hit 9 homers, and he had an 1115 OPS, 1.115 OPS. I mean, he had an insane run from September 1 of 24 through April 2025. But that also came with a 30% strikeout rate, signaling a lack of sustainability. Over his final 222 PA of the season in 25, before the injury, he hit 222 with a 326 on base and a 360 slug for a 686 OPS. And he struck out 32.4% of the time. So when we talk about what he did over a 2-year period and a 130, all right, let's just go bigger sample. Pavin Smith is entering his age 30 season. He's got 1,540 plate appearances, and he's batted 246 with a 736 OPS. That's a 102 OPS plus, and it comes with a heavy, heavy split. 772 OPS against right-hand pitchers, 597 against left. He is strictly a platoon option who's been inconsistent and showing an ever increasing strikeout rate. And oh, by the way, in his 283 innings at first base last year, he was -2 fielding run value and -4 defensive run save from Baseball Reference. And so at best, you can say he's kind of a league average defender that can kind of hold down the fort. He's got no range. He's okay on the scoops. He's got kind of a strange footwork problem. He seldom goes into a deep stretch. His feet are always too close together. He never lunges out to take away that millisecond on a close bang bang play. And it counts. It matters. And if you watch his footwork closely, it's really strange. Like he never stretches out and gives you that long stretch that you used to see him from a first baseman when you're trying to get the out on a close play. So you may have no choice, as you said. I mean, look, this is where they're at. But who's the right-handed half of that? Tim Towa, he, as you just said, he had a very weak season following his first 50 plate appearances, and then at the end of the day, I mean, he ended up hitting 201 with a 620 OPS and 225 plate appearances. So if you're going to go into the season with Pavin Smith is the left-handed side and Tim Towa is the right-handed side, you could very easily be looking at a sub 700 OPS out of your first baseman. So I don't know, man. I think it's got to be more of a priority than we're being led to believe from that Gambo tweet. I don't think that they can afford. Look, they want a more defensive-oriented team. I get it. Okay, but Pavin Smith isn't the answer on defense either.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, one last point before I kick it back to you, Jesse. If Pavin Smith's playing first base, who's your DH? So one way or the other, you're going to have to go out and get somebody left-handed that can either play first base or DH that can hit.
Yeah.
And whether they trade for him, sign him, that guy isn't just sitting there in his system waiting to come up. One last point, Ivan Melendez, he was okay last year, but he had a 94 WRC plus in Reno at the age of 25. He didn't light Reno on fire. Some people may look at 292 average and 830 OPS and think, oh, wow, he's coming along. And he did reduce his strikeout rate down to 24.5%. But he was still below actually league average when you factor in the PCL and the ballpark in Reno. So I don't know. I don't think Ivan Melendez is anything other than a AAA player that is very unproven, and I'm certainly not counting on him to get the first base OPS over 700 either.
I guess going back to Pavin real quick, I mean, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Is Pavin, I mentioned the 130 WRC plus that he has over the last 2 seasons. You're very right that a lot of that production came not even over the span of 2 months, over the span of less than 2 months. It was September of 24, and then about 2/3 of the month of April this season. But I also don't think that we should say Pavin is what he was from May onward. I don't think that's fair either. So the
Correct.
truth probably lies somewhere in between there. You're probably expecting about maybe a little over league average hitter against righties. I think that's fair to say. And all I'm saying with regard to this is that if the baseline expectation for Pavin is, a 110 WRC plus against righties, something in that range, that is at least a high enough bar to clear that it's not like super easy to clear as the strong side of a platoon. It's something you would have to spend some money on that in order to get a player better. And to your point, I mean, they really do. They have DH at bats available as well. So maybe there's a world where they do add a first baseman and then Pavin just slides over and becomes your primary DH, in which case you don't have to sort of choose between them. But yeah, I think Pavin is at least a player that I can understand the Diamondbacks not viewing him as just a zero complete wild card going into next year. Like, I think your expectation at this point with Pavin is he can probably hold his own at this level. He's never had a strikeout rate nearly that high before. That was more the exception than the rule for him.
Cautionary tale, and I'll leave my last point at this. Non-elite hitters generally fall off a cliff at 30. So that may be what's going on with that strikeout rate. Like you said, I mean, it was a lot of swing and miss. I mean, he's got a good batting eye. We know that. So it's not like, he doesn't know what pitches are coming. He can pick them up. He's got enough experience. And you talk about the middle road. I'm okay with saying, yeah, he could probably be somewhere between 100 and 110 OPS plus or WRC plus against right-hand pitching. But there's a significant risk that he's actually significantly worse than that based on the aging curve and the strikeout rates we saw. So the risk portion of his, paradigm has gone up, I believe. So that's kind of where they're at. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think with Pavin, I wonder if the serious uptick in strikeouts has something to do with him just really trying to get the ball in the air more. We've seen him. It feels like his approach has changed a little bit there the past couple of years. I guess his rate of hitting the ball in the air is not dramatically different than it was before. His ground ball rate has been a little lower the past couple of years, but nothing super dramatic there. But we have seen a pretty significant uptick in power from him. I mean, his barrel rate was 11.7% this past year, which is pretty good, and it was 14.7% in 2024. So maybe him trying to sell out for power a little bit more has something to do with the strikeouts there. But yeah, all that to say, Jack, I think I will very much agree 100% that if the D-backs don't add at first base, it is a risk. And it is a fairly substantial one at that. Given the numbers that you cited earlier of the production this team got at first base for the second half of the season, it does not seem advisable to just go into next year with what you have and feel good about that. That's definitely not anything that I would be advocating for.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we are going to talk about Merrill Kelly and his market more later in the show. But first, it is time for our DraftKings player spotlight. Well, Jack, it happened on Sunday. You and I were both there. A highly anticipated moment that we haven't talked about yet. Geraldo Perdomo did notch his 100th RBI on the final day of the season in the ninth inning, as last minute as it could have been, but it did happen. And it was really the icing on the cake of a really extraordinary season for him.
Just incredible. I mean, there isn't anybody out there other than maybe Perdomo himself with belief in himself that could have thought that he would have this kind of season this year. Credit to the Diamondbacks. They gave him that extension. Um, and I'm sure that they saw more upside in his bat based on what they saw in 2024. I mean, he certainly improved. There was no question about that. But where did his power come from? I mean, we looked at his bat speed and his bat speed increased this year, but it wasn't like leaps and bounds. It was ticked up. I think from
Right.
what 66 to 68 or something like that.
Still very low.
Yeah, still very low. Um, but he's able to pull the ball in the air. He's able to figure it out. And so kudos to him. Just a fantastic season. 7 WAR season from Geraldo Perdomo, the first year he's extended. So that's really something. We criticize the team a lot for the things that they failed to achieve, and sometimes unfairly, admittedly. But we certainly need to sing their praises on an extension well made.
Am I getting this right that Perdomo led the National League in WAR, Jack? Or is that Baseball Reference not realizing that Ohtani is also a pitcher?
Well, so he led in position player WAR.
Okay, so that doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean that he led in overall WAR. I guess. Okay, I'm looking at the numbers now. Ohtani was at 7.7. So
Yeah, if you go to wins above replacement all, Sanchez had 8, Ohtani 7.7, Scheme 7.6, and Perdomo 7. And then they
okay.
separated out position players, Perdomo 7, Ohtani 6.6.
All the same, Perdomo among position players finished second behind Shohei Ohtani in WAR on both Baseball Reference and Fangraphs. Just talking about the National League, and I know we touched on this a little bit earlier. Maybe it's worth revisiting for just a couple minutes here, Jack. The MVP case for Geraldo Perdomo certainly is not going to win the thing. We all know Ohtani's going to win it, but you can make a real case for Perdomo being second in this award. In fact, if I had a vote, that's I would have to think. I would have to think hard about it. I don't think it would be an easy decision. I don't. I'm not the type of voter or the type of baseball analyst where I just blindly take the WAR rankings and those are my top 5 in the MVP vote. But at the same time, I mean, Perdomo is pretty far ahead of any of the other position players in the National League. I don't think he will finish second when all is said and done, but the case could be made, Jack. The case could definitely be made.
I've made it before. I made it in August that
Right.
Ohtani is really the only one that should be above him. So I'm going to circle back to RE24, run expectancy for 24 base out states. This is situational baseball. This is what are you doing with the opportunities presented to you. So a base out state, nobody on, nobody out. That's one base out state. One man on, nobody out. That's another base out state, and so forth. And you go through all of those. And what is the difference in the run expectancy before and after you're at bat? That difference is what you added to the run expectancy. In the National League, the top 4. Now remember, this is an offensive stat only. Shohei
Right.
Ohtani, 58. Juan Soto, 52. Kyle Schwarber, 43. Geraldo Perdomo, 41. That's your top 4. Okay, now Otani's a DH/pitcher, but the gap between 58 and 41 is quite large. So again, he was so far and above on offense. Plus, he pitched. No argument. Shohei Otani's the MVP. But Soto was a below average outfielder in right, and Kyle Schwarber is primarily a DH and only beat Perdomo in a key offensive number like RE24 by 43 to 41. So when you take into the difference of account of shortstop versus DH, there's absolutely no question in my mind that Geraldo Perdomo was a more valuable player than Kyle Schwarber when you take everything into account, the position they played, the defense they played, the clutchness of their performance. So now you're down to, okay, well, who was more valuable, Soto or Perdomo? I really, if anybody has Geraldo Perdomo outside the top four of their ballot, then they're just looking at home runs and RBIs, and they're not capable of being even remotely objective. If Perdomo's outside your top four, you screwed up royally, and there's a really, really strong case to put him number two.
Wow, very bold statements from you, Jack. I love it. There's the question of where Perdomo should finish, and then as you're kind of getting at there's the question of where he ultimately will finish. And my guess, Jack, is that Soto will finish higher. Soto almost had a 40-40 season. People love those numbers, even though they probably shouldn't. And Soto also had a substantially higher OPS than Perdomo did, and I know people look at that a lot. So I'm guessing Soto finishes higher, even though arguably he should not. I think Kyle Schwarber will also finish higher because 56 home runs and 132 RBI is hard to ignore. He was a really, really big part of that Phillies team as well. I think he's going to get a lot of credit for them being where they are, and rightfully so. So those two guys, for me, there's almost no question. Francisco Lindor, I could kind of go either way. I think the case for Perdomo over Lindor is fairly clear in my mind. But again, Lindor had a 30-30 season compared to Perdomo, 20 homers, 27 stolen bases. Wouldn't shock me if a good number of people had Lindor higher. And honestly, maybe this is crazy for me to say, Jack. I think some people are going to have Corbin Carroll higher on their ballot than they will Geraldo Perdomo. I'm not saying that's the right decision. I think it pretty clearly is not the right decision, but I think it's going to happen at least a couple of times because Carroll is the bigger name. He did have a 30-30 season. There's more homers. There's more stolen bases. And his OPS is, I guess, what is it about this? It's a little bit higher. It was a little bit higher at the end of the season. So that's my gut there, Jack. I'm thinking Perdomo will finish probably fourth or fifth, maybe even sixth, something like that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I'm not saying that he will finish second. I'm saying he should.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking at an esoteric stat like RE24. It just happens to be a great one to help illustrate things that actually traditionalists really like, which is, did you come through when it mattered?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just a great way to quantify the good old clutch gene.
Very well said. Well, if you have never bet on baseball before, you can of course do that over with our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Of course, October baseball is here. The pressure's on, the lights are brighter, and with DraftKings Sportsbook, you're right there in the middle of every moonshot moment. And yeah, if anybody had wanted to place a bet, certainly DraftKings Sportsbook is the place to go. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. And Jack, what do we got here for this week?
Well, if you're like me and you want to put even just a little more fuel on the fire to root against the Dodgers, I am going with the Phillies plus 105 to beat the Dodgers in the NLDS. They do have the home field advantage. They're well rested. I think they have the better bullpen. And if their bats aren't, the top of their order is really great, but it's not. I don't know if it's quite as great as the Dodgers, but certainly they can stand toe to toe with them. Sanchez against Otani is going to be an incredible game one matchup. And Dodgers starting pitching is really rounded into form. So it's going to be a tough series. I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring series than most people are anticipating. But I'll go with the home field advantage, making up for more than the difference here. And again, if you want a little more fuel on the fire to root against the Dodgers, this will help get you there.
I think this series is going to be quite entertaining. I mean, I think these are probably at least the two teams in the National League that I would probably have at the top of my list right now. I know the Brewers had an awesome season too. I'm a little bit skeptical of their postseason hopes for a couple of different reasons. But yes, once again, new customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $200 in bonus bets instantly over at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Minimum minus 500 odds required. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Well, we are back here on Snakes territory. Of course, one of the big questions facing the Diamondbacks this offseason, Jack, is will they be able to bring Merrill Kelly back to Arizona? Kelly has been very clear that he has loved being a member of the Diamondbacks. He's already signed multiple additional contracts with the organization, and he is officially a free agent at this point, or I guess will be here in a matter of a few weeks. So we wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking about the market for Merrill Kelly and how big of a possibility this really is. Jack, I know as usual, you've done a deep dive, taken a close look at some of the numbers. What did you find out? What were your takeaways there?
Well, I mean, for his age, he's got a really good track record the last 4 years, although one of those years was very much injury marred. He's going to be 37 next year. So I took a look, first of all, at his last 4 seasons and created a weighted average. So the weighted average is, essentially a 4.321. So it's weighting the most recent performance accordingly. In this case, his age 36 season counts for 40% of the weight, and his age 35 season, 30%, and so forth. And so that comes out to 151 innings and about 2.5 average WAR. A WAR is simply averaging Fangraph's FIP-based WAR and Baseball Reference RA9-based WAR. The weighted average ERA is 3.61. And I put the xFIPs out there because I thought it's kind of interesting to note that over the last 4 years, he's had exactly the same xFIP at 3.84. xFIP is your expected FIP, normalizing home runs per fly ball rate to the league average. So if he's giving up the league average number of home runs off of fly balls, that's what you would expect his ERA to be about. So that's kind of where his 4-year average weight works out to. And that's usually the first basis for any kind of projection going forward. However, then you have to apply an aging curve. And unfortunately, and we're going to see this in how teams behave, the aging curve for the vast majority of pitchers is going to be quite severe for ages 37 and 38. And so I did a little projection with the aging curve thrown on for age 37 and 38. And the first thing you should notice here is that comes out to about 128 innings in 26 and 103 innings in 27. And you might be thinking, well, he just threw 180 last year, but he also threw 73 the year before that. He's got a shoulder injury now on his resume. He's had the cramping issues, which he was able to control. And then just at this age, you don't know what's going to happen with a 37, 38-year-old. So it's just very difficult. No projection system is going to just spit out a number that has him continuing to keep rolling along at 170, 80 innings pitched. But I didn't really degrade the quality of the innings that he's able to give. So it still came out to more or less a 4 WAR total over a 2-year period. But that's probably a little bit on the optimistic side. I probably should have lowered that to about 3.5.
Yeah, I mean Merrill is such a unique case because it is not common for pitchers to basically be at the top of their game when they're 36 years old. Like this is not Merrill Kelly's career path has not exactly been normal. And so as we think, Jack, about some comps, which I think is always kind of the best place to start when you're thinking about a free agent contract, there's not a lot of great fits. I mean, are we gonna try to compare Merrill Kelly to one of these Hall of Famers who's gotten a massive contract in their upper 30s? A Verlander, a Scherzer, one of those types of guys. I think he's pretty clearly in a different category. At the same time, I don't really view him much like a Clayton Kershaw type because his injury. I mean, there are injury questions with the shoulder trouble he had last year, but he hasn't been all that injury prone. I mean, he's coming off a pretty healthy season this year. So yeah, I think you can expect a whole lot more innings than you can from most pitchers in this age range. So it's really hard to find a comparison here, Jack, but I know we tried to do that anyway.
Well, so I went over to Roster Resource on Fangraphs, and I simply looked at 2021 through 2025 starting pitchers age 36 or above. Now, Merrill's heading into his age 37 season, but I used 36, just brought it down 1 year to look for a sample. I'm not sure if you have that graphic, Jesse.
Here it is.
There we go. So I was looking for pitchers that got multi-year deals. And in 2025, age 36 or higher, there were none. In 2024, you had Kenta Maeda at the age of 36, got a 2-year, $24 million deal, and Clayton Kershaw got a $2 million, $16 million deal. Justin Verlander in 23 got 3 years, $120 million, but he was age 40 and he's Justin Verlander. Similarly, Max Scherzer at age 37 got 3 years, $130 million. So you've got 3 Hall of Famers and Kenta Maeda, and that contract worked out very poorly. In 2025, you had Alex Cobb get a 1-year deal at $15 million. He got hurt. You will see some deals around that range of 1-year deals in the $13, $15 million range if you search back the last 4 or 5 years. However, as Jesse pointed out to me pre-show, there is one guy that maybe is a little bit better comp for Merrill in this circumstances. So I'll let Jesse take over from here.
I was just grasping at straws trying to think of some other comparison we could make because frankly, most of these comps, like I would rather have Merrill Kelly on my team than some of these other pitchers, at least at this stage in their career. And so the name that came to mind for me was Charlie Morton, who has had a remarkable career, has been quite solid into his late 30s and now even into his 40s, still holding his own. This is a guy who made $15 million in 2021 and made $20 million from 20 in the 2023 and 2024 seasons, and then got a year and $15 million this past year from the Baltimore Orioles. So I know this most recent contract was a 1-year deal, but prior to that, it was a 1-year, $20 million year that I believe had a club option tacked onto it that the Braves picked up, if I'm getting that right. And am I not getting that right?
Well, so I'm just looking at Baseball Reference real quick here. So I see him at let's see, 2020. His first year with the Braves was $15 million. So he was with Tampa Bay. He was $15 million at 35, $15 million at 36, and he made $15 million at age 37 in 2021. And then it went up to $20 million in 22 and 23.
Right.
And his transaction log, sorry, I apologize, guys. I'm scrolling here. Just bear with me 1 second.
It's been harder to look up Charlie Morton's contract situation than I feel like it should be. But while you're looking that up, I will say real quick, like
Yeah, it was a 3-year.
Morton. Sorry, say that again.
It should have been a 3-year deal because he signed as a
Okay.
free agent in November of 2020, and then he wasn't a free agent again until 2024. But I don't know if they just extended him in the interim.
I think it was an extension. I'm pretty sure they signed him to a 1-year deal, I believe it was, and then they gave him a $20 million 1-year deal with a team option for another year
Okay,
beyond
there
that.
you
I
go.
think that's where we got to 3 years. So somebody in the comments correct us if we're butchering the Morton contract situation. But I will say, Jack, Morton is a different pitcher than Merrill Kelly. Like he's had power stuff here for a number of years. Teams are probably, especially at that stage in his career, we're putting him in a bit of a different category than where they would put Merrill Kelly right now. I don't know if it's fair, but I feel like the industry perception with Merrill is more as an innings eater, more as a guy you want on your team, but not necessarily a guy you want to throw out there in game 2 of the NLCS or something like that. And whereas Morton, I mean, I don't think he was that guy this year or even last year, but you don't have to go too far into the past where Morton was a legitimate postseason starter, throwing 96 miles an hour. Merrill Kelly's a different type of pitcher for sure.
Yeah. So all of this is to say is that there aren't really very many good comps for Merrill.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what I believe, I've seen the numbers like 2 years, 36 million being thrown around, and I haven't looked it up. I bet that's something I don't know what Spot Track has. While I'm talking, maybe you can go see what Spot Track has for him. But to me, that just seems very high. I really don't see teams giving him a 2-year deal with an average annual of 18 million to a 37, 38-year-old Merrill Kelly. I think that's way much of an overshoot for what his actual market is going to be. I believe in the Diamondbacks case, I can see them maybe going like 2 years, 28 million to 2 years, 30 million. And if some other team gets a wild hair and wants to guarantee a third year or go higher than 14 or 15 million average annual, then I think the Diamondbacks will be priced out. I'm not even sure they'll go as high as 228 or 230. They have budget limitations. I think they would like to bring Merrill back, but I don't even know if they're willing to go that high considering the budget limitations that they have.
The
Now,
D-backs do have
I was just going to say, Merrill himself has so often said that he loves it here,
right.
and he has taken a below market deal. I mean, when he signed a 322, I don't know if it was below market at the time. It's not like he was coming off a great season, but it was probably a little below market when he signed it, and then he just outperformed the heck out of that deal. So is he willing to take another? Is he willing to take a serious hometown discount? If it was, the difference between 28 million and 30 million, yeah, Merrill Kelly's going to stay in Arizona. But if it's a difference between the D-backs offering Kenta Maeda like 224 and some other team is offering 232 with an option and a buyout, then he's not going to turn down an extra $10 million. I like Arizona too, but I just don't see it.
I will say, I mean, I think the Kenta Maeda contract at least means we're talking about north of 2-24. Just because, I mean, Maeda's injury track record has kind of always been a disaster. I mean, he hadn't pitched at all the season prior, and he had a 4.23 ERA in 20 starts for the Twins in his walk year there. So it wasn't like he was coming off some extraordinary season when he got that contract. I know he was a little younger than Merrill. He's about a year younger than Merrill is right now. But yeah, I think it's going to be north of 2-24, Jack. I think 2-36 honestly would have felt within reason for me if Merrill had finished the year really well with the Rangers. If he pitched the way that he did with the Diamondbacks down the stretch, I don't think I would have been shocked to see it go to the 236 range, just given the demand for starting pitching. that we see in the sport, and the fact that I think Merrill is in kind of a different camp than most of these other guys in his age range that we've seen in recent years. But he had a 4.23 with the Rangers down the stretch. He had an 87 ERA plus in 10 starts after being traded from the Diamondbacks. He gave up a lot of home runs with Texas. And I think that might bring his value down a little bit. For the season, he finished with a 117 ERA plus, which is good, but it's more mid-rotation than top of the rotation type stuff, especially when you factor in the aging curve that you discussed earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he pitched the last two starts were bad. I mean, his first 8 starts with Texas was 3.19 ERA. But it
Right.
came with a 4.49 FIP because there were 9 home runs in 48 innings. And then over his last 2 starts, ironically, he didn't give up any home runs, but he gave up 16 hits and 7 1/3, and that turned into 9 earned runs. And that, those last 2 outings ballooned his ERA with Texas.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, look, Merrill Kelly is a lot of fun to watch pitch, and I would love nothing more than for the Diamondbacks to be able to bring him back and get to see him healthy and doing his thing, and just frustrating guys with well placed cutters and changeups that they just swing through and can't seem to figure out, and mix in the kitchen sink. And he's a fun guy to watch pitch. He's a favorite for a reason, and he's a favorite of mine for a reason. So, I would love to see the Diamondbacks bring him back, and I wouldn't care if they overpaid a few $1,000,000 to get him. I
Yeah.
just don't think they will.
I'm curious what all of our viewers, all of our listeners think about this. We would love to hear from you in the comments. What would you be willing to pay for Merrill Kelly? The D-backs have enough money to get him if they want. I mean, it's not like they only have $10 million to spend this offseason. It's probably more in the 40, $50 million range, something like that. So they do have some money to spend this offseason. It's just a matter of how you're going to allocate it. Are you willing to give half of that or close to half of that to Merrill Kelly and not have a whole lot of resources to work with for other needs? That's going to be one of the big questions this team faces in the offseason. I will say at the same time, Jack, I think you could do a lot worse than giving Merrill Kelly, $16 million for the next 2 seasons. I mean, this is a team that has 2 wide open rotation spots. And if you're looking to contend next year, if you're looking to really be in this thing, I mean, you can't just rely on arms from AAA to come in and fill those spots. I mean, you probably need to go out and get 2 starters who are proven on some level in this league. And Merrill Kelly is one of those guys, and he comes at a lower cost than most players who put up his kind of numbers in 2025.
Yeah, I can't stop myself from applying a steep discount for ages 37, 38.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. I mean, the attrition rate is so high, and the rarity for pitchers to be able to keep going and provide that many innings, which is let's face it, the ability to go out and give you at least 5.5 to 5 1/3 to 6 innings, pitch into the 6th inning almost every start. I mean, that's the value,
Right.
along with decent run prevention, and to be able to post up 30 times. And the track record of guys. Let's not forget, it's not just his major league innings. He pitched a lot of innings in Korea, and if you add up all of Merrill Kelly's total professional innings, he's still got a pretty heavy workload for his career, right? I mean, he's actually been
Yeah.
extremely durable. As a professional pitcher, all levels, he's over 2,300 innings pitched. Majors, minors, Korea, he's thrown over 2,300 professional innings. The fact that he's only had the 1 year with a shoulder problem is really quite remarkable. But that's not a small workload, and he's going to be 37.
Yeah. All great points for sure. Let us know in the comments what you think about Merrill Kelly. I suspect many of you are probably very on board with bringing him back, given what he's meant to this organization here over the past many years, going all the way back to 2019. What a journey it's been for him. Well, that is everything that we have in this episode of Snakes Territory. As always, we really appreciate your time. Be sure to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment, as I said before. If you're joining us on an audio-only platform, those 5-star reviews, they really make our day. They help us out a lot, so we really would appreciate that. And of course, you can find us on social media as well. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. And our show is at Snakes Territory. Of course, Jack does great work covering the team over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. He was giving us a bit of a sneak preview to his article about the team's first base situation that will be dropping on Friday morning. So be sure to check that out. Maybe by the time you're watching this or listening to this, that story has been published. Jack, any final thoughts here as we say goodbye?
Go Phillies.
There you go. Enough said. Well, thank you again to all of you for being with us. We really appreciate your time, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.